Please note that this content is for adults only. It contains details of crimes against children. Viewer discretion is advised. If you haven't yet, please hit the like, subscribe and share. Thank you. Hi everyone. Right, I'm going to attempt to cover the Leilani Simon trial. Quinton Simon is the victim in this case for the third time, and I'm hoping that it works properly this time. So we're going to start with a background, basically. So let me just set up the correct, bear with me, and helpfully have the wrong one open. Introduction and background is the one that we want. So let's have a look. Okay, sorry about that. Right, so we've got a little boy here called Quinton Simon. For those of you, just first of all, welcome everybody who is watching this. As a little bit of background, my name's Bev. I am a child protection lawyer in the United Kingdom, and really what I want to do with this channel is bring awareness to the various cases that demonstrate exactly what is happening in the house next door or across the street or in the next town, and to help people learn lessons about what they can do to help prevent this kind of thing from happening. So this case, it gripped me a little bit. So I have just been watching it with Grizzly True Crime. I watched the entire trial with her. So if you haven't seen Grizzly True Crime before, please head on over to her channel and have a look. She's amazing. And she covered from day one this case right back when Quinton Simon was a missing child. And then when the trial arrived, she's covered the entire thing. So I don't want to show the entire trial in its entirety, but I do want to bring awareness to Quinton's case because it is absolutely heartbreaking. This little boy was 20 months old when he died. And his mother, who is pictured on this slide here, this is little Quinton. And then this is his mother, Leilani Simon, next to him. And she not only killed her child, she then drove his body to a nearby trailer park and put him in the dumpster. which is absolutely devastating to even contemplate. Now, Leilani is a Hawaiian name, and it means heavenly flower. And what I can say, having watched the entire trial, is this is not a heavenly anything. This woman is a menace. She's an absolute monster, and she deserves not to be ever in our society again, as far as I'm concerned. So it was the 22nd of October. Sorry, no, it wasn't. It was the 4th of October when Leilani says she went to bed, woke up on the 5th of October, and her front door was open and Quinton was missing. At that time, Leilani was 22. She's now 24. And she's now convicted after the trial that's taken place over the last 2 weeks of his murder, of concealing his body by putting him in the dumpster, and of making false reports to the police and lying to the police. And you'll see why as we go through the case. I'm going to break the case down into various stages. So today I'll give you a little bit of background, and then I will go into what the opening statements were, what happened on day one, and then we'll move on from there, and we'll have a little bit of a summary of what happened on each day of the trial, because it was really quite interesting. The way that the state put their case was really organised and well thought out. Tim Dean was the prosecutor, and he definitely had his ducks in a row before we started. So he had lots of material to present via screen to the jury and to the rest of the courtroom, bearing in mind it was televised. And he brought the witnesses through in a really sensible order, and it built a really clear picture about what happened to little Quinton. Now, apologies. So this is Quinton's family tree, and you can see little Quinton here. Now, he had 2 siblings. So mum is Leilani Simon. With one father, she had Zed, who was 4 at the time, with Daniel Youngkin, who was her partner at the time of this incident and the offence. She had an infant daughter who was about 4 months old, who we'll refer to as S. Now, in that household, because Leilani and Daniel Youngkin and the children were living with Leilani's mother and stepfather, so it was Billie Jo Howell is her mum, and Thomas Howell is her stepfather. And also living in the house was her brother, Paul Simon. Now, you'll see from the pictures of the house that it's quite well separated out, the area that they were living in. So it was almost like 2 separate properties, really. And this is the house that they resided in as a family. So it's 535 Buckhalter Road in Chatham County in Georgia. Now, if you look at the 2-story section of the house, that is where on the bottom floor, furthest right, is the bedroom of Billie Jo and Tommy. And then upstairs there was a bedroom that Paul Simon inhabited, and also And this is the most heartbreaking part of watching this for me, was there was a bedroom upstairs with bunk beds for the older children, a nice cot for S, and it wasn't in use. Even though Billie Jo had custody of the children, they were staying in this little one-story section of the house, and the beds that they had were a pack and play travel cot, we'd call it in the United Kingdom, for Quinton. S, the infant, was sleeping either on the settee, which isn't safe, or in a swing, like a baby swing. And the older boy was sleeping on a little plastic race car bed in the same room with Leilani and Daniel Youngkin. And they weren't ideal conditions. I'm just going to throw it out there. Now, prior to this incident, a few things occurred that you probably need to know about. So let me tell you about those. So in September of 2022, 7th of September to be exact, police were called to a domestic incident between Leilani and her mum, Billie Jo. They had a verbal argument about the use of the washing machine, of all things. And Leilani is said to have screamed at the top of her voice in Billie Jo's face. And Billie Jo is then said to have responded by, in their own words, getting in Leilani's face and shoving her against the wall. Now, at the time that incident happened, the children were present. So that's domestic violence that they're being exposed to. Leilani at that time was on probation for a theft incident, and one of her other brothers, not Paul, came to collect Billie Jo and remove her from the home and from the situation, basically, to try and de-escalate things a little bit. Oh, just flipping slides. After the incident that the police were called to, the police kind of asked Billie Jo to leave, let things calm down, and she stayed away for a few days. But she also said that she was really tired of Leilani, who has a history of stealing from her and buying drugs with the money, generally not kind of keeping the peace in the home. And she was of the view at that time that she's probably going to have to evict Leilani and Billie Jo. Now, she didn't say at that stage whether she meant and she would keep the children, or certainly the older two. She had custody of the two boys and wasn't supposed to leave them alone with Billie Jo. On the 8th of September, so very quickly, Billie Jo went to court and got a dispossessory notice at the Chatham County Magistrates, and that was to evict Leilani and Danny from the Buckhalter Road address. She alleged in that eviction dispute that she wanted to remove them because of damage to the property and also a lack of peace. So she wasn't able to enjoy her own home because of the difficulties she was having with Leilani and Danny. So on the 16th of September, Leilani and Danny found out about that notice. Not sure why it took basically a week or more for them to serve Leilani and her boyfriend with that notice. But in any event, that could have been a trigger. It would certainly have been a stressor for Leilani at that stage. This slide shows an aerial view of the property. So you can see the red pin demonstrates the actual house. Behind it, there is a pool. Then behind the pool is a garage. And off to the left-hand side of the property, you can see, oh grief, you can see a little building there. It's actually a carport, quite a large carport that they keep an RV under. Now, at the time of this incident, so we're talking the 4th and 5th of October, Billy Joe and Tommy were out of town on business, and that was very quickly established by the police. They were out of play in relation to the incident. So the thing that is a bit of a problem about that is that Billy Joe should not have left the older boys in the care of Leilani. So at the moment, she isn't facing any charges in relation to that. But I think she should be held accountable for the fact that she's left the children in what she knows is an unsafe environment and gone out of town. Now, Quinton was reported missing on the 5th of October at 9:42 a.m. Just look at his face. He's absolutely beautiful. What a stunning little angel. And the really sad thing is he looks so much like his mum. So it was 9:42 when she rang and reported him missing. And she stated that she couldn't find Quinton, that she'd woken up and the front door was open and the playpen was empty. Now, Danny Youngkin started work on that day at 6 o'clock. So he'd left for work, and Leilani rang him at around 9 o'clock and said that she didn't know where Quinton's at. He's gone. And Danny dashed out of work, and we'll hear as part of the trial evidence that he was visibly upset, and he rushed out of work, left his coat, which was, in his words, a very nice and expensive coat, and he dashed home. So that gives some indication that at that point he's also kind of a victim of this ruse that Leilani's created. They described to the police that Quinton was wearing a light blue Sesame Street pajama top and black pants. Got a mind of its own, this machine. I didn't ask it to move slides then. The pair stated that as I say, the front door was open. But again, we'll hear as part of the evidence in the trial that actually it was the kind of door that was difficult to open quietly and quite difficult to open full stop. So, and it wasn't used regularly. They predominantly used the back door because that leads to the area where the vehicles would be kept. Now, Michelle McCarter is another individual that you need to know about. And she was the babysitter who often looked after the children during the day whilst Leilani and Danny were at work. I assume when Billy Joe wasn't available either because of work. So she should have been having the children that day Leilani and Danny were scheduled to work. They worked at the same factory. But Danny sent a text to Michelle McCarter, essentially saying that they didn't need her that day. And then she got a message about 9 o'clock. So it was very early that she got the first message. It was like 5:40 something, I think. Then at 9 o'clock, she got another one from Danny saying, does she know where Quinton is? And her response to that was to immediately go to the family home. It's literally just like a few doors up on the opposite side of the street, to see if she could help with searching for Quinton. And Leilani didn't want her to go into the house and help search, which threw up a bit of a red flag for the babysitter, understandably. And nobody had called the police at that point. So by 9:42, Michelle McCarter was at the residence. She was trying to get them to get other people to help search. And she also urged them to ring 911, which they did eventually at 9:42. Now, the 911 call was actually made by Danny, not Leilani. And he says, I need the police to come by 535 Buckhalter Road. I believe my son's been kidnapped. And Leilani is heard in the background. So she's not on the phone directly, but you can hear her screaming in the background. I can't find my 1-year-old son. I can't find my son. I woke up and the front door was open and his playpen is empty. Please. And Danny adds on to that, and he can't even open doors. I left for work at 6 o'clock and she called me at 9 o'clock and said, I don't know where Quinton's at, he's gone. So the operator asks, was he left inside the residence? Danny says no. And the operator says, how was the door? And he says, no breaking in. The door was just open. And the operator asks, unlocked? And he says, yeah, but the front door has got bolts. Though, yeah, it was. So I think at that stage, it's clear Danny is not really completely clear himself about what state the door is in. He's just parroted Leilani's story and hasn't really thought about it until that point when he's been asked questions about what state the door was in. And Leilani shouts from the background, no, I can't find him. He's got to be out of the house. I've looked everywhere. So the operator asks for a description and she says he's got blue-green eyes, tan skin, dark hair. And the operator says, say what now? Because Leilani is quite hard to understand at this point. And she says his eyes are like brown-green hazel and he's got tan skin and dark hair. And the operator asks what descent is he, and she says he's Hawaiian. And then Danny again says he can't even open doors. And Danny adds one extra final point that I think is quite pertinent to Leilani trying to build this alibi and this ruse of a kidnapping from the house. And he says, she told me she seen a car sitting out front about 10 minutes ago. So she's adding into the mix this car that's seen outside of the front of the property. Now,
the investigation. On the 11th.
So during the investigation, the 11th of October, so we've got a few days after, the babysitter, Michelle McCarter, speaks out. And this is Michelle that you can see on this slide. And she speaks out to WSAV TV and she says, I got a text that morning saying they would not be here, would not be babysitting them. It was at 5:29 a.m, which was kind of odd because I have them even when she doesn't work, meaning when Leilani doesn't work. And one could presume that the reason she still has to have them, even if Leilani isn't working, is because Leilani isn't supposed to have custody and control of the children. Billy Joe is. And you see a little bit later that there's an altercation between Billy Joe and the babysitter, and Billy Joe is saying to the babysitter, I asked you to help me. In other words, to keep the children during the day whilst I'm not around, giving the impression that, you know, she's upset because she tasked Michelle with keeping the children safe when she isn't there, which is a little bit unfair. She doesn't live in the property. She isn't a parent. She isn't a carer. She isn't, a registered guardian of any kind. She's got no control over what Leilani does. But I think that's where that comes from. And then she goes on to say that she gets a text from Danny again at 9 a.m. saying, have I seen Quinton? And I immediately go to the house and I try and help them look. They don't want that. So I've just been waiting around like everybody else. And then on the 12th,
of October, the police confirmed that they believe Quinton is deceased and that Leilani is the prime suspect.
I have no idea what it's doing at this point. It's trying to play something to you. So 12th of October, the police confirm that they believe Quinton is deceased and Leilani is the prime suspect in his murder. So we're only a few days after the event. And at that point, she's raised enough red flags for the police to say that she is the prime suspect and that they believe that he's deceased, which is awful to think that they came to that conclusion so quickly. But we find when we're going through this that they followed the evidence and it very clearly led them back to Leilani. You see, inset on this picture here of Quinton is a picture of many volunteers from law enforcement sifting through trash at a landfill site. On the 13th of October, the police held a press conference and they said that, again, they reiterated the belief that Quinton is no longer with us. And the FBI supervisor, senior resident agent Will Clark, said this. And I think it's really poignant. So I'm going to actually give it to you parrot style. I think you need to hear exactly what he said. So he said this: To the Chatham County community, our hearts break along with yours, trying to comprehend what we believe happened here. The FBI, along with our enforcement agencies, have followed every lead, every tip, and every piece of evidence to get to this point, and we continue to do so. So that was on the 13th. A few days later, on the 18th, the police come back in front of the press and they announce that they think that Quinton's body is in a local landfill and that they're going to commence an extremely challenging search. So they made reference to the fact that it's going to be like the proverbial needle in a haystack. And you can imagine that, a landfill site with, you know, tons upon tons upon tons of trash. And I know that they segment things off so that they can pinpoint where things would be based on what truck it comes in and when it comes in. But even so, that is a huge task. It's a massive undertaking. But the local Georgia police and the FBI concluded that they had to undertake that search. And Chatham County Police Chief Jeff Hadley said this: "We know that this is going to be physically, mentally, and emotionally a grueling task for our investigators and team." And Will Clark from the FBI went on to say, "We, along with our law enforcement partners, go into this process with heavy hearts. We did not want to end up at this point, but the evidence has taken us here. This will not be quick and it will not be easy, and the outcome isn't certain. As the chief has just said, we want justice for Quinton and we want to find him a proper resting place. We've been following the evidence where it's taken us, and the evidence has taken us to this landfill." So they then start this immense task, which is going to be huge.
Landfill searching. On the 19th of October,
oh my word,
was the first full day of landfill searching.
I have no idea why it keeps trying to play the old thing, even though I'm not asking it to. Good heavens. Right, so
and then on the 21st of October,
it's still doing it. Apologies, everybody. I have got no idea how to stop it doing that.
on the 24th.
Oh, good Lord. So the day after, they started the landfill search, Billy Joe and Leilani Simon were seen taking shots at a beach bar. The bar was called Stingrays at the neighbouring Tybee Island. And you'll see from this picture, you know, Leilani does not look like the grieving mother. They were, you know, down in tequila shots. They were there for hours. One person said that customers were voicing their concerns about the pair drinking in public in the middle of this investigation. And one of the servers said they were having a great time, like they didn't have a care in the world. They were drinking patron shots in the deck area, being loud and laughing. It's almost like they were trying to draw attention to themselves. So that's what the staff member thought at the time. And I have to agree, honestly. I think, to go out and be visibly enjoying yourself and happy the day after the police have been on national TV and said, we're starting a search into finding the remains of a baby, your baby, in a landfill. I can't wrap my head around how or why, whether she's guilty of something or not, this woman would act that way. If she is the victim and she's the grieving mum and she's lost a child, you clearly wouldn't expect her to behave that way. You can imagine that someone might turn to drink, but they would do it quietly or angrily sometimes, maybe. You wouldn't be enjoying yourself and living it up and having a party. And if she is guilty of something, why would you draw attention to the fact that you're not acting like a mum should be in those circumstances? It's bizarre. But in any event, this slightly dysfunctional relationship between Billy Joe and Leilani resulted in them going out and having a really good time. And then on the
21st of October, 3 people were arrested.
The 21st of October, there was 3 people that were arrested for protesting outside of the house.
On the 24th of October 2022, Leilani Simon broke her silence.
that is the background of the case. Now, the next one will look at day one of the trial, and that will include what has to be one of my favourite opening statements of all time. When I said before, this guy has his ducks in a row, I really mean it. I have been a trial advocate. I've been practicing law for too many years, 23. 25 if you include my training articles. And I've seen a lot of people do a lot of advocacy. Apologies. And I think it isn't just that he tells a good story, because obviously part of an opening statement, that's what it is. What is impressive is that he sets out the timeline very, very clearly. And on top of that, he then has little clips of the evidence to show on the screen as part of his opening statement. Now, you don't really get away with that in the United Kingdom, but it's actually really quite effective. So we'll have a look at that, and then we'll have a look at, there were, I think, 5 witnesses on day one, all very short, members of law enforcement that were the first people on the scene, essentially. So we'll have a look at that on the next occasion. Thank you all for being here, whether you're watching this live or you're watching it as the replay. I really appreciate you all. If I can ask you, please, to just hit the like button. That will help us get into the algorithm. Even more so, if you make a comment of any kind, that will really help us get into the algorithm on YouTube and get put out to more people. And it remains to say this: please look after yourselves, look after each other. Until next time, goodbye.